Carolinas, or especially the Outer Banks, they're being affected really on the leading edge of climate change, things that are happening and affecting erosion and, the more of the storms.
People are losing their property and it's a shame. The state is taking it over as parkland. There's all this other political stuff going on. You have to be as prepared as possible.
A lot of companies just really taking the growth at all costs mentality of it's just how many doors do you have? But they're not looking at it from the perspective of an experienced operator like you are.
Sometimes you have to be what the market wants you to be, not what you want the market to be. And so you have to be able to pivot.
We'll start the show in just a minute, but first, a word from our premier brand sponsor.
My name is Allison, and I own Bailey Vacation Rentals in Southern Maine with my mom. We have been in business for a little over 7 years, and we have been using Hostfully for a little over 4 years. Before using Hostfully, some challenges that we faced was a lack of synchronization. Channel distribution was a big one for us in making the switch as well, and the support that we felt from the other property management softwares. When we were comparing options, what really made Hostfully stand out is we felt that they had a true passion for the industry and for the customers. It was everything that I was looking for just was served to me almost on a silver platter. So when I was making another property management switch, it was almost instantaneous for me to know that Hostfully was the next move for us. Some features that are game changers for me with using Hostfully is their guidebooks. They're incredible. We also use it to connect to our website, which shows our area guide, the pipeline, how we use our guest communication, right? And how we can see where the stages of development are at. And the unified inbox has been extremely helpful for us. My most favorite piece is really the channel distribution. It was huge for us. And that really allowed us to up our network and up our online presence and be able to compete. Hostfully has allowed us to be operationally sound because it has made our life easier. It actually allows us to continue to seek more homeowners or to seek new guest experiences or expand on the business itself more than being in the trenches. Hostfully has improved our guest communication through their automations, being able to set our templates and triggers, you put it in there, you check what you need, and there it is. There's no guessing. I would describe the support we received from Hostfully as extremely informative. And I felt as though that we were really set up for success. There wasn't much that was left for question. There wasn't things that we had to figure out. Everything was extremely black and white. And so when we made that adjustment, it was very natural for us. I would absolutely recommend Hostfully to others. I always recommend Hostfully to others because they're always continuing to grow. They care about their customers. They're expanding out their knowledge. They're giving us more tools. They're expanding out their channels, their distribution. It's just a continuous level up. It's a team for them and it's a team for us. And you can feel that throughout the entire start to finish process.
Looking for a smarter way to manage your short-term rental operations? Get started with Hostfully and bring everything into one streamlined platform. Alex and Annie listeners get free onboarding when you mention you heard about Hostfully from the Alex and Annie podcast. Click the link in the description to get started today.
Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we're joined today by Tom Stewart, who is the COO of Resort Realty in the Outer Banks. Tom, it's so good to see you.
It's so good to be seen and great to see you guys. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So tell us how the weather is in North Carolina. Alex and I were just talking off camera. Myrtle Beach is cold. Panama City Beach is cold. So what are the Outer Banks like?
It's very cold. It's
Yeah.
beautiful blue skies, but the wind's blowing and it's a little chilly. I was hoping I could wear a nice logo short sleeve shirt, but that wasn't happening today. So,
well, we'll have you back again so you can wear a short sleeve shirt. But before we get started, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about you and your journey in vacation rentals?
It's probably similar to a lot of folks. I sort of backed into it, but, I came from a completely different industry, but tangential. I mean, it was related to it. I was originally in the country club business for a long time and a big club in central North Carolina, multiple golf courses and all that. And did that for a while, got out of the industry for a little bit, went into senior living. So I got into property management, sort of touched on that, a whole different sector. I learned some great things in that industry, went back into clubs, Ended up in Lafayette, Louisiana, believe it or not. Completely new territory for me. Had a wonderful time, learned a lot. My family loved it. It was a great experience. But at that juncture, I'd been thinking maybe it was time to do something a little bit different and started looking around. It was during the last oil crisis, at least for the industry. There's always an oil crisis in Louisiana. And the economy had sort of taken a dip, and I was looking around there, didn't see anything. And by chance, I ran across something that Sue Jones from HR for VR was working on, Tybee Island. It was Tybee Vacation Rentals. And they were looking for a GM. I think they were growing. And I ended up visiting them and taking a position with them. And I spent probably a little bit over a year on Tybee working with them. And they were great teachers. Talk about two professionals who know the business backwards and forwards and really gave me a crash course in the industry. We parted ways and I ended up here in the Outer Banks. And I hadn't been here in 20 years. And I came up and talked to a guy named Stewart at the time and took the job as a director and then became general manager. And then he departed and he left and I took the role of COO, coincidentally, about 6 months before COVID hit. So interesting time. But yeah, I mean, I've been in hospitality for a while and I've been in property management. I've had a lot of experience in construction and project management, that type of thing, first in the club business. So it was sort of an adjacent industry, but a natural progression. And this is probably the fourth company that I've actively run, but it's also I've had the second longest tenure. I think I've been here as of tomorrow, 9 years.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
yeah, that's a run.
Yeah,
I'm loving
congratulations. So I dare say, like, if you were at a club scenario, you know how to deal with owners. You know how to deal with picky people.
Owners, members, their families, their kids, the spouses.
Yeah, a lot of stakeholders and opinions and everything else.
yeah. A lot of people to please all the time. Not much different. I mean, we're here. We've got our clients, on the owner side, and then our customers and our guests or tenants, whatever you call them, on the guest side. So, you're getting it from all directions, but it keeps us exciting. I mean, there's never a dull moment. Always an opinion to be heard.
Yeah, but it's never dull.
Sure.
Wow, that's interesting. And Tom, I've known you now for a couple years that actually have been working with Resort Realty, and I didn't realize. I knew your background for sure at Tybee, but I didn't know that you were in the country club and also assisted living space. So that's kind of interesting background. But I mean, it all makes sense, right? And as Annie and I always say, you can't connect the dots until you're further ahead to look back. But those dots definitely connected for a reason, I would say, to get you where you are now, and managing a thriving vacation rental company in the Outer Banks. But tell us a little bit about the Outer Banks and just kind of the climate of vacation rentals, because I think that's one thing I've learned in my time working with you. It is a very unique market.
Yeah. It's got its own life, its own vibe. I mean, a lot of people call it the granddaddy of the vacation rental market. I mean, there's some great names that came out of it, and this company, for example, has been here for 40 years, and it's not the oldest company. There's a couple others that have been on the beach for a little bit longer, and there's been change. I mean, you've noticed the Vacasa stuff and some other companies in and out, and that happens. But generally speaking, there's about a dozen large vacation rental companies, well established. There's a lot of vacation rental inventory in our market. If you just look at we just go up as far as Corolla, not Corolla, Corolla, and it's up in Currituck County. We're that whole band that goes all the way down to about Hatteras. It's about an 80-mile stretch, and on average, it might be a mile or 2 miles wide. In some places, it's literally you can see the ocean over here and the sound over here, and you hear about that a lot when you go down to Hatteras. And there's probably, a dozen or so different villages and little towns and townships that stretch the whole run. Some companies go up into the 4-wheel drive area up in Carrava, and some companies have properties down on Ocracoke Island, which you can only access by ferry, either from the mainland or from Hatteras. We go from Corolla to Hatteras, and then we also go into the mainland and Currituck a little bit with some of our long-term property management stuff. So we do a lot of driving, and we do a lot of driving north and south, and occasionally you make a left and a right. If you go too far,
Yeah.
you get wet. So,
Yeah.
but highly seasonal market during COVID, that changed. And we saw more of, it's a bell curve. We go spring and it goes up, peaks in July, and then starts to slow down into December. When you get a nor'easter out here in the winter, it's bitter, it's cold. I
I
mean, if you
bet.
really look
Yeah.
at it, we are out in the Atlantic Ocean, and Hatteras in particular. We are, my mover said to me when he brought the furniture from Savannah, he said, "How many oceans I got to cross?" There were three.
Oh, wow.
For him, it was, and it is a lot, several miles of water to get out here. But it's a huge variety of inventory. I mean, we just within our portfolio, our largest home is 20 bedrooms, and then we have 1-bedroom condos at the other end. So we have a broad variety. We have oceanfront, we have Corolla, we have Hatteras, we've got, they call them little beach boxes. They're like ranch houses, but they're up in the air on pilings. 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, pools, hot tubs, sound side. It's oceanside. I mean, a huge mix, condos. And you'll see that up and down the entire Outer Banks. It's a wide variety. Some are bona fide second homes. Some of them are in and out. Some of them are strictly investment properties. It's a very robust rental market. And but like I said, it really peaks in the season. And it's very seasonal. And even more so now. I mean, it's busy now, but and we'll get a spike for spring break. But then it'll kind of calm down. But that flywheel's turning, and it'll just pick up speed, and we're just getting busier and busier. So 6 months of planning and prep, and then 6 months of, it's our Super Bowl, and then we can take a break after that. So yeah,
I think when I met you,
place.
I mentioned I grew up going to Hatteras every summer. That was where our family vacations. We stayed down at the Avon Pier, which I understand now is not there. But it's interesting because I was I'm young enough or young enough. I was young enough. I'm old enough that I remember when they moved the lighthouse the first time. And so just having seen that and now watching what's been like the buildup, and I've worked with some accounts there when I was in channel management, like along the coast there, and just there was nothing like in Frisco. There was just like hardly any homes. It was like, those little bungalows, we called them bungalows. That's what I was thinking of. My parents took us to a place like that every September when I was really, really little. And then we got family together. We would run a house in the summer. So a lot of stuff I know has changed there, but I'm really curious because I think that the Carolinas, or especially the Outer Banks, they're being affected really, I would say, on the leading edge of kind of like climate change, things that are happening and affecting erosion and, the more of the storms and things of that nature. How do you, as an operator, kind of I don't know, you can't really forecast that because it sort of happens. But I know that there's areas, I think Rodanthe is the big area that's had a lot of erosion and houses fall into the Atlantic. But as an operator, how do you think of that in like the long term of the business?
Well, there's two sides of that. I talked to a scientist at the Coastal Research Institute here over there on Roanoke Island, and so first off, what they wanted to make clear was it doesn't matter what you believe about climate change or not climate change. That can get very political, and we go, let's put that aside. But they do say we have data going back to the 40s, and the water mean high tide is now this much higher than it was that long ago. So do with that what you will. So you need to plan ahead. And a lot of the towns have taken, when you put in a permit to do new construction, what you could build on the ground in the past, you now have to have on pilings. I'm building a home in Kill Devil Hills for the company, and it's about 4.5 feet off the ground. Something built 10 years ago is on the ground, and it changes the style of home and how you're going to do it, elevator access, handicap access, and all that type of thing. So it makes you think a little bit differently. We're really getting, and I'll just say this because it bothers a lot of us here. I was at a meeting and Doug Brindley and Tim Cafferty spoke up, and we're getting a lot of bad press about that type of thing with the climate and the weather and the changes and the storms. It's primarily happening down in Hatteras and the area you mentioned, the Buxton, Frisco, Hatteras area. And it's tough. They're out there and they're getting hit. They're at that little peak where they're close to the Gulf Stream and they're getting hit from all angles. And it is a problem. The rest of the Outer Banks, we have intermittent flooding or some beach erosion, but nothing like you would see late night on YouTube videos or on the national news or the local news. But it is a problem. We have a home that everybody has seen that we've rented for years. It's the very first home at the beach when you get to Rodanthe, which is the tip of Hatteras, what we call Hatteras, the whole thing. And it's the Black Pearl. And it's been sitting out there for years now and is now abandoned and closed. And it's a shame because it's a beautiful home. We would have guests who say, we love that house. And we said, why do you love it so much? It's like scary. And they said, well, we can fish off the back deck.
Oh,
Bring the fishing pole back into the living room. Someone can unhook the fish, throw it in a frying pan, rebait me, and I can throw it back.
That's scary.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And they wanted to come down no matter what. They said, we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. We're like, no. The county, the town, everybody, it's unsafe. It's been condemned. We need to shut it down. But it is a shame. There are beautiful homes down there. We've had close to 20 of them go in, and this past winter in particular. So how many are in our program? It doesn't matter, but people are losing their property, and it's a shame. The state is taking it over as parkland. There's all this other political stuff going on. To answer your question, you have to be as prepared as possible. And down there, we have about 15% of our inventory is from Rodanthe to Hatteras. And so we do deal with it. The biggest challenge is I may have somebody who lives in Frisco, but I've got a problem in Rodanthe. They're down there, but they can't get from Hatteras to Avon because those roads suffer from overwash.
Washed over. Yeah.
And, we've had parties show up and then they can't leave.
Oh, goodness.
But that also means that people can't get there, so they just stay an extra couple nights. Because,
and what can you do?
I mean, I guess there's worse places to be, right?
Yeah.
But we have a dedicated team down there, and everybody who has homes down there, I mean, you'd be surprised. But the folks from that area in Hatteras are very resilient. I mean, they'll just look at you and go, yeah, it's getting a little salty, which means, in our world, all hell's breaking loose. But they deal with it, they cope with it. And then I think a lot of people who tend to rent down there or own down there are acutely aware of what can happen. And sometimes we have to move people out. We have to go to them and say, I'm sorry, this home, you're not going to have access. The sand is piling up. You need to go. And we work that out. Otherwise, we just try and get back in as soon as we can. If anything's unsafe, we're not putting people in it. And nobody is. But it's a real challenge. And I think it's affected our bookings down there this year. We're seeing, if anything's dragging down our overall, that nice, beautiful bell curve, it's Hatteras, not because it isn't beautiful and a great place to be, and the fishing and the kiteboarding and the surfing. I mean, that's bar none some of the best in the world. But people are concerned about sometimes, well, maybe I'll go there and I can't get back. Well, that could happen anywhere. And as we roll out of the springtime and into the season of the summer, that likelihood becomes less and less likely. But it's a challenge, and we deal with it. And we're up at all hours of the night, and we're working with guests, and we're working the phones ahead of time to let people know before they come down there may be a delay. But usually within a day or two, the bulldozers are out, they're clearing that thing, and we're back open for business. But it is nice that I've got people down there who really understand that and have been in the industry a long time and know how to work through it. But it's a challenge. Some guests find it exciting.
That's a good perspective of them to have that, to be kind of exciting. Because I can only imagine, going to Outer Banks if it's your first time on vacation. I mean, that you would never expect to even ask questions about a scenario like that happening. But and I think as you were telling the story there, it just made me think. You guys have been around for 40 plus years, and there's some other companies that have been around a long time there as well. And it's very clearly a market that you really need to know what you're doing. This isn't a market that you just go buy a quote unquote Airbnb and decide to put it up for rent and figure it out. Because that's years of operational excellence, but also probably a lot of trial and error over the years of what works and doesn't work, not only just from how you're scheduling crews and how you're dealing with it, but how you're explaining it to guests and how the guest communication works. And, what do you do if you have to delay them for X amount of time? How do you handle, do you do discounts, things like that? That only comes really with experience, and you guys certainly have that by now.
Well, and you can have things as simple as, sometimes the internet will go out and one of our people, one of our managers will get in his truck and start driving north until he can get a signal.
Wow.
And download everything he can and then take it back to the office and work manually from there. I mean, we're practically sending up smoke signals. That happens occasionally. As the power goes out, they were building that beautiful bridge down there, the Bass Night Bridge, and they cut the main power feed to the
I
island.
remember that.
And for a whole week, there was no
Yeah.
electricity. They have generators. But it was, it gets a little dystopian. It can be fun, but, it's a little scary. But, we got, we had people who said, I want to come regardless. And we had to be careful because of the water system. If you have no power, you don't have potable water, that type of thing. You can't run. Some of the septic systems have pumps. So you have to say, no, we're sorry, we can't accommodate you. But people were like, I'll bring a tent. And I'm like, that's
not how this works.
The sheriff
They
department
waited
says,
all
please.
year for their vacation. So
Yeah.
that's
But you guys bring up a great point. It is a challenge. Now, when the weather gets bad, it's not every part of the Hatteras from Rodanthe to Hatteras at the same time. It could be some areas are having more trouble than others, and you might have to move people, and that happens. On top of everything else, it can get very interesting very quickly. So
yeah. I guess just having my mindset on where I used to vacation, I was just thinking about that because it's like we deal with here in Panama City Beach. I think Myrtle Beach has some of it. It's like there's sections of the beach you just can't get through and you have to go around it. And then you throw in things like water, running over roads. And that happens over to the west towards Pensacola a lot too. It just really, really, those are things you can't operationally be prepared for, but you can have kind of a backup plan, I guess.
Well, it really is. I mean, when we know it's coming, the biggest thing is, I think it's the same thing in any situation. It's communication. And here's a shout out to humans versus AI.
right.
AI doesn't know how to handle that. You have to have the human element. You have to have people on the ground. You have to have somebody who's willing to pick up the phone and explain to folks. And generally speaking, our guests and our owners, if we can communicate with them and we can let them know what's happening, good or bad, it has to be both. It can't just go silent. People are wondering. Generally speaking, you can get through that and make accommodations, and maybe trips get cut short, or you have to get a vendor down. And we have, labor issues down there. You can't afford to live, and people are commuting from the mainland. It's all kinds of stuff that makes it a challenge. But part of that is if you take all that away, and what your family may have liked was the remoteness, the fact that you can get away. If you're looking to go, golf cart and go-kart tracks and that type of stuff and mini golf, that's Hatteras, and then go out to eat every night.
Oh, not there.
That's not where you're going. You're going to stargaze, kiteboard, surf.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was younger, I hated it, and I was like, "Why do you torture us this way?" And now that I'm older, I'm like, "Oh, what I wouldn't."
That sounds amazing. Yeah, exactly.
I just would love to be cut off from the world for a week.
Yeah. Safely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. Yeah. That goes without saying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the Outer Banks, and the whole Outer Banks has its gorgeous places. Yeah. But it's busy, and that also in the whole climate of vacation rentals. I think when I hear stories about other markets where we're talking about regulation and the industry is getting pinched by localities and that type of thing. Here, number one, because North Carolina has such a strong vacation rental program through the Vacation Rental Act that kind of laid a lot of stuff out for us in terms of everything from trust accounting to how you deal with tenants versus guests. That kind of kept some of that at bay. Maybe in some of the cities like Asheville, they're dealing with it a little bit differently. But this is a vacation rental tourist spot, and the industry is driven by that. There is no other industry. Everything supports that. The banking, the insurance, the construction, the workforce. There are retirees, but generally speaking, without the tourism industry, this would be a very different place. And I know some people would say, well, that's what I want, but that's not what it is. It's very big. So it's one thing we don't have to deal with. I mean, we deal with local ordinances and things we have to work with like that. And that makes sense, stuff that keeps the homes elevated and safe and that type of stuff. Occupancy levels, we want to make sure we're all on septic. There's very little sewer capacity. But as far as municipalities or towns or cities coming in with a hammer and saying, no, or we're going to make you go away, we're dealing with the weather and other issues, but we're not necessarily dealing with that. I'm going to say knock on wood yet, but there's a pretty good relationship between the municipalities and the vacation rental industry, and how they support each other and try to work together. So that's a big plus for this area.
Yeah, for sure. And we see that in most of the legacy markets. I think it's a lot of, I mean, I guess some of them are legacy too, but it seems like it's more the markets where vacation rental as a product is newer, and the demand of the offsite rental, individual homeowners coming onto the scene is really what is ending up being more of an issue in a lot of cases. But I would imagine the majority of the inventory on Outer Banks is professionally managed. Do you have any idea what the percentage is on that?
It's interesting because it's hard to say because Resort Realty, we have all of our inventory on Airbnb, VRBO, Bonvoy, Booking.com, Lively, Hopper, Savvy, all these other things. So when you go in and look into account, you're kind of double dipping. Most of the Airbnb inventory is being professionally managed, although there's a big segment that isn't. There's a lot of independent operators, much smaller operators, but they're still, professionally managed companies. A lot of folks who have accelerated dwelling units or own other property. I don't know the answer to that. I honestly don't. I would say vast majority of the OTA, in my opinion, is managed by professionally as well. And even with all that, our company is still 75% direct book with all of that. And we do good business with those OTAs, but most of our business is direct book still.
Yeah. And so you guys, you're right around 600 properties, I believe.
Right 621.
621. Today. Okay, great. That's even better. I've been saying 600 for a long time now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And we've grown a little bit every year.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. I had just done a LinkedIn post about this yesterday, and it's something that Annie and I hear all the time, that we've got, the industry there's a lot of newcomers that have started businesses around, like post-COVID, basically, that they had the idea to start the business. And then once they started reading things and hearing podcasts, they realized, okay, I could build this and I could sell this portfolio in this business in less than 10 years and make a nice chunk of cash. And I think that's led to a lot of companies just really taking the growth at all costs mentality of, it's just, how many doors do you have? That's like the key thing that they're looking at, but they're not looking at it from the perspective of an experienced operator like you are, that you're not trying to go out and get 100 new properties, every year. I mean, you guys have built up in a responsible manner over the years. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what's the difference between growth and scale from your perspective?
Well, we have direct experience with that. Back in 2019, we purchased a company that had about 130 units. And I think that the owner of that company, he wanted to build it up and then sell it. And we also, even back in 2017, and we had some attrition from that. In 2017, Outer Banks was still coming out of the Great Recession. They said it ended back in 2012. Well, the reality was it really took a while for it to kind of roll out of this market. And a lot of homes for a long time did not have a lot of upgrades or preventative maintenance performed on them. And a lot of places were in pretty bad shape. So when we first really started to see an uptick, at least for Resort Realty, an uptick in the market for ourselves, we had a lot of inventory that, today we probably wouldn't have taken. So over the years, and fortunately with COVID, it is a fortunate, a silver lining on COVID, I suppose, was the Outer Banks absolutely just boomed and we were busy year round. A lot of new owners who came in with cash, a lot of new owners who saw the great returns they were getting, a lot of owners reinvesting in the properties and bringing them up to current standards, or at least to standards that were acceptable. So that was interesting because our inventory we had some issues with it, but it sort of took care of itself as people invested in the properties. But today, I think we follow the same kind of mantra that most companies do, especially at our size, is that we will not look at specific properties because they don't fit our business model anymore, because they're more effort than they're worth either to the owners or to us, or they're just too difficult to book because there's a glut of them. There's a certain size house in a certain location that's not worth taking. And I hate to say that because every home means something to that owner. But as far as our portfolio goes, there was overbuilding in certain segments, and we don't really want to do that unless it's truly remarkable. So we generally, all the bigger companies, most companies here, we are sort of competing for the same, what's the expression? He or she with the most ocean fronts wins.
Yeah, the crown jewels.
And so there is that. So we're a little bit more selective, but by doing so, that means we spend more time on productive homes with owners that are receptive to ideas, as opposed to doing battle with owners who aren't, and then spending with the old 80-20 rule. You spend 80% of your time with 20% of the issues. We're trying to move away from that so that our people can make quality decisions about quality homes, and we can get our attrition rate down. Because no one wins when you're fighting 100 battles to get a home that can't rent to rent, including the bigger, nicer homes, because you're taking your great talent and saying, I need you to help me fix this. And they're not looking at those homes that have that great upside on them already. They need even more attention, if anything. So it's a reallocation of resources and time and effort, and saying, yes, we'll help the home that needs help. But generally speaking, if we have a solid portfolio, we can make all these quality decisions that will help everybody all at once. So that's kind of a shift in thinking. Some of it was evolutionary. Some of it was just sort of hammering home the point over the last several years that this is how we're going to do it, and then doing it.
You mentioned we were talking about the makeup of the island and the whole Outer Banks, the lack of sewage system. So I think would that be you probably don't have a centralized laundry on the islands, right? You have to bring it in, or how do you handle laundry? Because I know that is a challenge with some areas where they can't do commercial laundry.
The third-party market for laundry is huge here. I know some of our competitors, and I mentioned their names earlier. They have laundries, and they're very successful with it. We looked at it, and we had a small laundry for a while. But at this juncture, we outsourced to a company that's in Elizabeth City, and they have a massive facility with these $1 million tunnels and machines. And we lease our linen. We're too big to do it in and of ourselves. I learned that in the country club business when I went and visited the laundry we use just for the tablecloths and napkins and and pool towels in Raleigh. And I looked at it and I understood then that it is its own industry with the same challenges, hardships, and successes that we have, but for there. And for us at Resort, we said, I don't want to have to spend that much time in an industry that takes just as much time and energy as my industry. Let somebody else do that. It costs a little bit more. Let them handle the logistics. Let them deliver to the house. You make all the beds in every home for every reservation, and let them do that from beginning to end. We'll put it together for when the guest arrives. But completely outsourced for us. We just had to. I had at one point 50-50. They did the laundry. They brought it to us. We packed it out. We delivered it. I had 4 giant box trucks. We were doing everything but washing it. And I finally said, we're going to get out of the logistics business and just focus on customer care and guest care.
Well, at least the market's changed because I remember having to pack up. We had more, my parents' big old station wagon had more space for linens and towels than anything else we could bring because we always had to bring that. But I've always wondered how, I experienced that from the guest side. There's still some markets that you absolutely, New Jersey is a market you still have to bring your linens or you rent it from somebody. It's like a whole different thing. But being able to provide that service it's challenging in the best of circumstances. I mean, like you said, the laundry is a whole ecosystem in its own. So I was just curious where that had come to because I do remember the bringing of your own linen. So that was making your own bed, which seemed crazy.
I did that with my family when my kids were little. I think somewhere in Emerald Isle at one point we went and brought our own linen. I think we even cleaned our own cottage. And my wife looked at me and said, "Vacation? What vacation?" And we never did that again. We said no.
Exactly.
We didn't think about it. We were trying to save money.
And that was just the way it was, though, too.
Give the option. We'll be back in just a minute. But first, a word from our premier brand sponsor.
My name is Talia Lockard. I'm the head of sales and marketing at Hostiva. We have been working with My Booking Pal since about 2019. Hostiva is a full-service property manager and software company. We manage about 6,000 properties over 16 countries over a myriad of services. At Hostiva, we have our own custom-built PMS where we build our own direct channel connections. The reason we decided to partner with Booking Pal is because they were able to expand our reach. Booking Pal really stays on top of making sure that all partners have easy API access to add on other channels, even for people like us who have our own channel connections. Implementing the integrations with My Booking Pal have allowed our teams, more time and more trust and less worry on our sides, right? We know things are working. The reason Booking Pal was a good strategic choice for our business was we specifically wanted to connect to some of the channels that they had access to that nobody else did. Having the exclusive ability to distribute to Homes and Hideaways by Hyatt has been a big plus for us. We are aggressively growing in the independent hotel and multifamily sector, where being able to attract those travelers that are used to staying in a hotel like a Hyatt and feeling safe with that kind of brand has been really increasing when it comes to conversion and numbers for our revenue side for these type of properties. I would say Booking Pal as a partner is a really good, loyal friendship, right? We have a nice integration that's obviously put deep rooted into tech, right? But the teams really speak well together, and we have a direct contact if we need it. It really is important to us to have 24/7 customer support, and we really value that in our partners. I would definitely recommend My Booking Pals to others. It has just helped us to continue to grow and be in front as many travelers as possible. And it's helped us to do that with ease and with partners that we feel like we can trust.
Looking to expand your distribution and grow revenue without adding operational complexity? With Booking Pal, you can streamline channel management, connect to global marketplaces, and bring greater visibility and control to your distribution strategy, backed by a reliable team you can trust. Alex and Annie listeners get onboarding fees waived, plus 20% off your first 2 months when you get started. Click the link in the description to learn more.
You know what's funny though? I've told this story to people many times when I'm telling them about the evolution of vacation rentals and how back in the day, that was very common. And honestly, I can guarantee you there's people listening to this episode that did not know that this was a thing. But back in the day, especially with the beach home rental companies, you had to bring your own linens. There was no option to have them. And then at some point you got the option that you could have your beds made, but that was for an additional fee. And I think there's still companies that run it that way. But did Resort Realty start the way that it is now, or did you pivot that over the years of how that worked?
Okay. So we had this thing, and we still do, called owner-centric. And I think during the Great Recession, owner-centric, and I know there's a whole story, and you know something about that.
Yeah.
But during that time, it was
that.
give the owners all these options. So Resort gave these options like the owner can pay for the linen, the guests can pay for the linen, there will be no linen, there'll be linen provided. And we had all these things, and it was very complex and complicated. And from a housekeeping standpoint, we had to check, well, do they get linen? Or where's the linen coming from? Are we making the beds? Are we not making the beds? Are we just providing the linen?
Chaos, right? Sounds like chaos.
So we made a decision, and this owner-centric was so that the owners could control, what their expenses were and what their net might be. And it was absolute chaos. So I said, enough of that. We're just going to make the beds. And during COVID, that made sense. It's very confusing about who had linens and where they went and who got them and who didn't. So during COVID, we just said, well, we're just going to stem to stern, just make the beds and go all in on this. And we're going to build it into our fee and nobody's going to worry about it. What it did was it cut down the number of phone calls by 15, 20, 30, 40 a night. Oh, I got the wrong linens, because nobody could check because you didn't make the bed. If you make the bed, the queen fits the queen, the king fits the king, twins fit the twins, and no question asked. You don't have to go get a tech after hours calls and driving all over the place and that type of thing. So we solved a logistics issue and customer service issue by just going ahead and making the beds. And that's why we did that. It drove our costs up. But at the end of the day, we were also looking at a reputation management and going, we're getting all these complaints. We had a great time, but they didn't have our linens ready. Well, let's take that out of the equation. The beds were made, everything was set, everything's prepped. That's not the issue. The water heater blew up. That things can happen. That's different. But not having the right pillowcase, that's not an issue. So we're working on satisfaction. But
that makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure your owners actually ended up appreciating that it was an owner-centric decision that you made, because you made life better for everybody. So
yeah.
And one more question on the old days on this, because it's interesting just to hear from a company that's been around for a long time. But you currently now you outsource your linens, the whole procedure. But at any point, do you think if you had thought about it, the company had thought about it years ago, that they would have started it sooner? Like, is part of the issue now because you're so far into it that to go and now, get sheets for 600 properties is a massive financial undertaking. Like, do you think if they had thought about it in year 5 or 10, things would be different now?
I think this company was no different than a lot of companies. You do what's customary, you do what's expected, you do what your competition is doing. I think you go, oh, these are the best practices, so that's what we're going to do. I'm not the first to say let's make all the beds and have that ready for the guest. I certainly am not. I mean, I have plenty of competition here on the beach that's been doing that for a while. I do know there's still companies that don't, and they still have all these options so that there's freedom of choice. We choose to make the beds so that you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think there's an evolution of stuff. I think as the industry matures and matured, especially through the 80s and into the 90s. Is this me talking to some of the old timers and things like Verma, and nowadays with podcasts, we're more aware of these other things. And I don't think anybody would want to go back to that necessarily. And if I hear about some new way, maybe, drones will drop the linen in and to an isolated.
It's going to be robots someday.
We'll figure that out, and then we'll go to that next process. But we're still humans, staying in beds and enjoying the beach, and there's certain things that you have to take care of. So I think this was customary, and somebody said, "Well, I'm going to one up you and do this," and then it became part of the process, and it also became part of the expectation. When I go to a hotel, when I go to Marriott, I don't walk in and go, "Now I've got to make my bed."
Exactly. Yeah. Who wants to do that after driving for 10 hours?
So I think it was coming. It was going to happen, and it will continue to happen.
You've been there, you said 9 years now. What other big operational shifts have you seen in your time that you maybe were doing when the company was smaller and you just started out versus what you're doing now?
I think I will tell you this. I didn't mention in my brief bio, my first job out of college, I worked for the airlines, and I worked with pricing departments at Delta and Air Canada for flights in and out of the United States to Central and South America. And I worked for this company, and we took the data and we sold it or processed it and sent it out to Gemini and Apollo and Amadeus, the big res systems at the time. I think they're still out there doing work. And so I was in pricing. I was working, they changed the prices, and we would update the prices and the fare rules and all this type of stuff. Well, X number of years later, I'm back in pricing again.
I was going to say, you had the perfect background for what you do,
right? A little bit of everything.
Wild.
Yeah.
And I even got into software development with that company, but that was, cubicles and all, I wasn't into that.
Oh,
so
my
anyways,
goodness.
but I'm dating myself. But anyway, so here, fast forward to a few years ago, we're doing dynamic pricing. Obviously, that's a huge shift for us. We have a very specific way we do it. We use a big product that's out there. It ties in with our PMS, and we take it very seriously. Every Thursday at noon, myself, my general manager Lisa for STR, director of marketing Peter, Alex knows, our director of finance and revenue management Jason, and Alicia, who's our systems manager, because she helps us on the back end with all the OTAs and length of stay and all this other stuff. And our consultant with the pricing company, with the dynamic pricing group, we all meet and we have an all hands on meeting, and we look at everything, and we tear it down and we tear it apart, and we come up with a coordinated marketing plan for the week. We're looking forward. We look at what's lagging. We look at what social media. We look at what we need to talk about. We look at our email messaging. We look at our pricing for specific units. We make adjustments. We come up with promotions, and then we put that into play. And it's a huge time. It takes 6 people out of commission for an hour plus the work that follows. But we found that to be very successful. We do not set it and forget it. We are actively engaged in it. And in North Carolina, we have to redo the contracts every year. And the owners, technically by law, have to approve the pricing. So we have a baseline. And then we let dynamic pricing do its thing. And we adjust our tables and our algorithms based on those conversations we have on a weekly basis. But, we're now, according to key data, pacing ahead of the market for the year by 3%. So I'm going to take that as a win. So maybe what we're doing is the answer. Maybe it isn't. But to answer your question, that is one big thing. The second thing is, and I think a lot of folks are doing dynamic pricing. The second big thing is, although I will say I know companies that are also very, very successful. We looked at STR and said, this is that curve, slow, busy, slow. What do we do in the off season? What are we doing to maintain cash flow throughout the year? And about 3-4 years ago, I partnered with a real estate company and just said, hey, let's have a partnership. Let's keep talking to each other, refer people to each other. We need to keep our pipeline of inventory open. It's good to have these relationships. Not that we don't have them with other real estate brokers, but let's just make this something special and talk to each other. First right of refusal kind of thing. That evolved. I eventually, through the company, we acquired this company and we brought over a team of 3 or 4 brokers. And interestingly enough, a long-term rental program for commercial and residential. We've grown the commercial residential long-term, interestingly, in the last year by 20%, and we've almost tripled 2.5 times the number of brokers that we have. So we're creating this pipeline and offering full service to our owners and our guests. Some guests want to come down, live here for a year, then buy a house, but they vacationed with us. So we're trying to figure out this pipeline for the owner side and for the guest side, and then also make sure that we have better cash flow in the off season so that because long-term rentals tend to rent. And then if you stay at X number of occupancy, that cash comes in evenly throughout the year. So we went from a pure play short-term rental back to added real estate back, and then added this long-term commercial and residential component, which I will just say, you cannot run out of your short-term vacation rental PMS. So anybody who's like, oh, I'll just do this. Mm-hmm. It's its own company, just like the linen business. I have a director and a team, and we handle it completely differently. The laws just by themselves are so different for tenants. That's their home versus guests. There's no expedited evictions in a long-term rental. You go to the magistrate's office and all that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So for us, those are the 2 big changes: is how do we make the company more robust, offer more solutions? And then, of course, the dynamic pricing has completely changed. Now, are we going to talk about AI? Lurking maybe it's on my shelf back there.
Sitting right there in the corner waiting to do it.
And I don't know if you want to have that discussion, but that's something, that's at least inspired us to look at automating workflows and using products like, Zapier to go in there and take a look at what we do, especially with onboarding new clients, and say, we've got all these 10 different things and we've got all these selections, and build the spreadsheets and create the automation so that we're not manually doing this stuff, and see if we don't have to hire more management level people and we can automate some of that work. So we're actively doing that. And I'm fortunate that I have a couple people here who understand Process Streets, another product we're using, and their AI assisted tools. But it's not necessarily AI. Of course, everybody's using an AI product as a co-pilot for writing and getting ideas on a daily basis. So that's 3 things that are kind of changing the way we do business.
Well, and I mean, onboarding, especially for the type of properties that Resort Realty has, is a complex part of the business. I mean, onboarding a 20-bedroom house is not you sign the contract on Tuesday, they'll be up on Friday type of thing. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think that was actually one of the more fascinating things for me when I, got into my own business and working with different management companies, seeing or remembering when I was at Condo World, it was pretty easy to onboard a condo, especially when it's in a building that we had 50 of them in. I mean, we could really turn it around very quickly. But working in other markets like yours, where these are the houses and there's so much more to it, you really have to have a true onboarding flow, and the whole team needs to know what their role is and when in the whole process their role comes in. And I've seen companies try a variety of different tools to do it. I'm sure Zapier works for what you're looking at, but I think at the heart of it, the most important part is having the knowledge and the experience of what it needs to look like. And then it's just finding out the software that you're going to use to execute on it and what's going to make it the least amount of friction for the people, so that it is, timely as far as how it's bringing people in when they need to do something and then alerting the next person. Now it's their turn.
Yeah. I mean, onboarding for us is a process. Our PMA and addendum is, 12 to 20 pages, depending on bedroom count. I can get pretty involved in all the selections. I mean, we're doing deck inspections and elevator inspections and fire safety inspections and pest control and HVAC tune-ups every spring. And those are all options and services we can provide. We have vacay gear as a company you've heard of. We've got that as an option to provide, vacation rental gear. Plus, we have partnerships with other companies. And we do a pool and spa and carpet cleaning. Those are all things that people can select. So somehow all that information from just one new client has to be collected, and the photography and all that type of stuff, and has to flow, and then it has to get to the people who are going to create the work orders to make sure that this stuff happens and contact the vendors. It's a process. So we're looking at ways to try and streamline that and at least get the data to flow from the contract to the people. And we're still, does our PMS have a system for automating the creation of work orders? Not yet. I mean, and I'm not going to unleash AI into our system. I don't think they'd let us anyways. But our long-term system has back-end stuff that you can do through APIs where you can use some of those processes to help out there. But we're doing everything that we can with the tools that are out there to kind of expedite that process and then help the poor maintenance manager at the other end who goes, I got a 20-bedroom house. I got to get all this stuff done, locks and signage, and, we've got to let the linen company know what the counts are so they can build their inventory. So anybody who wants to get into the business, it's exciting.
And I hear that come up a lot, actually. I think there's a lot more managers now that are getting into, if not long-term, but midterm rentals. And we just had Jeff Hurst on the show from Furnish Finder maybe a month or so ago, and we're talking to him about it, that it's becoming more common, especially in markets where regulations are issues, that they're having to pivot this because of what's going on in their location. But others, they're not having to do it, but they just see it as an opportunity, but not always the easiest. And I think that's one of the complaints that most people have, is that they do have to manage mid or long-term rentals in a separate platform, at least long-term for sure, but maybe mid than their regular PMS. And that's something that comes up, and people want something that can manage all of it in one. And I think it's going to be coming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the opportunities there, and I think short-term vacation rental managers, we have the knowledge to kind of go in any of those directions. We have the baseline knowledge, and it's just sort of little I call it industry adjacent. It's close enough, but as long as we recognize it is different. And within our own STR stuff, I mean, the short stays. Back in the day, when you were visiting here, Annie, I mean, it was week to week, and they did not, yeah. And good luck trying to do anything different. The answer was, it's Saturday to Saturday, take it or leave it. And nowadays we have arrive any day of the week, and like the stay pricing, and certain homes offered. Our larger homes generally do not, because that seasonal vibe still carries through. But our smaller homes, and that's one of those owner-centric, you make the choice, you want it year-round, you want it in the off-season, you want to include September and May. I mean, we have options there. But it's a great way to generate extra revenue and fill weeks, and it creates more work, of course, because we still have to clean the house when you stay there 3 nights or a week. But, looking at what's appealing to our guests. Surprisingly, we thought that Airbnb would be a major source of short stays. They're not. They're weeks.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Market seems to have a reputation for that, and that's fine with us.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's the market trained the consumer to know what the market wanted. So that was one of those situations. I always tell people that, sometimes you have to be what the market wants you to be, not what you want the market to be. And so you have to be able to pivot. But I think it's some of these legacy markets, at New Jersey Shore, Martha's Vineyard, the Outer Banks. I mean, those ones are just, it's tried and true, for these larger homes. But I also think it's interesting. I remember we rented from Midget Realty. I think they're still around, aren't they? So we used to it was always very exciting when we would get their catalog for the upcoming year and be able to, and my mom she booked the same house every year before we left, but always made it seem like we were getting a choice. So we'd go through this whole book and look at all the houses and look at all that. But it was just so funny. It's that's the way it used to be. You had to make all your decisions in December to get to the printer, to get your books out in January, to book up for the summer. And there was no flexibility on that. So technology has certainly helped people pivot into all these different spaces. Curious to find out, okay, so we talked about your operations and things that you've changed. What do you think has changed the most with owners in that market?
So the biggest noticeable change is the owners who came in the peak of COVID. and bought in 21, 22, and paid incredible prices. And I don't mean incredible like great value, paid incredibly high
Incredible
prices
high prices, yeah.
for homes. And through to 2025, if they were here from 21 or 22, had really good years. And that old 10% kind of rule, it held true for a lot of homes or better as far as cap rate and returns. $1 million home, $100,000, you're good to go. Nowadays, it's not that, and we've had to go back and educate the owners and say, yes, this is your first foray into real estate. You need to understand that it's cyclical and things happen like this. If you're in it for the long haul, yes. And plus you get to use it and you get bragging rights for owning it or whatever. Your family can come and put all that together. Pure play investors understand that. Folks who they say this is a great time to go ahead and do this. The motivations were maybe a little bit different because of COVID, but the intent was the same. Let's get a really nice vacation home. And by the way, it's going to pay for itself. Plus we're going to make some extra money and we're going to build wealth through real estate and that type of thing. And that's not going to continue to happen, but those fantastic returns are not going to be coming through to them and netting out. Plus, to maintain that type of home that generates that type of cash, you have to reinvest at a minimum 1 week's peak rate. And we're not talking about put a new HVAC in or put a roof on. I mean, when a guest shows up, we're talking about new furniture, a new kitchen, new pool table, or a new amenity or a hot tub or something. Real investments that allow you to compete. And unfortunately, maybe we need to do more education. The owners think, well, that's your job to market and brand it so it rents. And we're like, well, yes, it is, but it's a partnership. And if you're not keeping up, we'll see the same thing that happened back during the Great Recession. And you will not get the rents. The guests will not return. The comments will be, it's looking a little tired. So that's a huge part of it. It's educate them and say, hey, that was great. I'm glad you made all that money and took all those trips to Aruba. But we need to
you have to reinvest.
Reinvest. And we saw that too. The tough one has been during COVID was the west side. We have 2 roads, north and south, Beach Road and then the bypass. On the other side of the bypass is more residential areas. They were a hotbed for vacation rentals. People bought homes that were normally owned by or rented by people who lived and worked here. And they bought them, they overpaid. Then they put another X number of tens of thousands of dollars in and furnished them and put that, it was all white furniture, white cabinets, and that gray LVP tile. And so now they all look alike.
And nobody wants them.
and nobody wants to rent them, no water view. And the problem is that they're coming to us now and saying, well, I can't do it in STR. Can you put it in long term? We say, yes, but you're not going to get what you think
get the same rate.
Yeah, anywhere close to that.
Yeah. And these people don't want furnished executive homes. So but that happens, and I guess there'll be some shakeout with that. But we've had some homes go from short term into our long term. And we've had to do some education on that front. But to answer your question, the biggest one was I paid this, I was making this. Now my home is not quite worth that. Interest rates are high, and I'm not getting the gross revenues that I was accustomed to getting. But that doesn't mean that the OBX is a flop. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. The OBX is still very successful. It's just that the expectation level, big readjustment for some folks.
And isn't it interesting? I mean, like we all talk about COVID and what happened all the time, I feel like still, but it's hard to imagine that people don't remember like that was why things were the way that they were. And it's like, did you really think that was normal? I mean, everything in your life was different at that time. So, for better or for worse, there were a lot of things that were different and that was not going to stay the same. But it's like, I hear that over and over that owners that are complaining because the rates aren't the same as they were in, 2020 to 21, 22, I think that's kind of when 23 things really started slowing down again, but it's amazing.
Yeah. And this market, it was pretty sticky through July of 25. About middle of last year, because they still had that FOMO thing happening. People couldn't get the home they wanted 22. They didn't get it 22. They didn't get it 23. Then 24, there were some residuals. Well, I still better book ahead because in 23, I couldn't get 20. So in 25, we still saw people booking a year out. Of course, our dynamic pricing model was saying, you're a year out. Not only are you going to pay this, but we're going to the system's going to push you here. And that's, and that was great. And it made sense, but it doesn't work that way now. Now the system is saying, we're gonna adjust rates, and we have guardrails for that too. But it's a completely different paradigm. On the real estate side, it's the same thing at play. The people are putting their houses out there, but they're asking too much. And then the homes sit out there and they don't sell, and then they've got to lower the prices, and they've missed out on an opportunity to sell the property. If you've bought or sold, you've heard that story from your broker, Price It Right. And on the long-term stuff, well, I used to get $3,000 a month. Well, you're not, no.
That's not going to happen.
That's not happening. And they say, well, I'm not making my payments. I say, well, you can get what we suggest, or you can get zero. And that's the reality. But real estate, great risk, great reward. It just sometimes it takes time. So,
it's an educational thing for sure. You've lived through a lot of it. But I've got one closing question, Tom. If somebody was interested in getting into vacation rentals and they were going to go in the operations field, what would be one piece of advice you'd give them?
As a guy with a liberal arts background, you can always learn the technical stuff. So my answer to that is don't go into it only knowing one thing. Be willing to learn a lot and go in knowing a lot already. And I'm not just talking about how to make a bed or how to price a house, but you need to understand things like, especially in our market, the cost of fuel. What other things are playing into the travel market? Are you a drive-to market? Does international travel affect you at all? So be broad-minded, and then you can get into it. You can learn the technical aspects. If you have them, great. But the big thing is be willing to look at lots of different factors to help you make good decisions. Just don't rely on one data set to figure out what to do. Get lots of opinions. Watch lots of podcasts.
So it's very sound advice. Yeah. No, that's great.
I agree with all that.
This has been so much fun, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us. I remembered when you said how it's 6 months on, 6 months off. I think I had asked you last July to come on the show, and you said, I'd love to, but not right now. I just can't do it. So I'm glad that we're in your off season right now as you're preparing for the busy season. But thank you again so much. If anybody wants to reach out, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
tom.stewart@resortrealty.com.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, if anybody wants to get in touch with Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And until next time, thanks for tuning in, everybody.